everyone, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by eBay Motors Group, with Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters.
Philip Nothard's taking a rare break this week as he's sunning himself in Greece and eating and drinking well, as anyone who follows him on Facebook or Instagram will know. But filling in for Phil is an old friend and colleague, Karl Davis, industry coach and speaker, founder of Coachworks, and a familiar name to many listeners for the work he does with dealers, dealer groups and OEMs. So welcome to the show, Karl.
Thanks for having me, Curtis. What an absolute pleasure this is, and big shoes to fill indeed.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll have a bit of fun over the next half hour or so, and it really is great to have you on the show. You and I caught up fairly recently because I was on holiday in your neck of the woods, which was great because popped in, had a coffee, and we did some planning as well, didn't we?
We did. It's amazing what you can achieve when you actually do a bit of planning, a bit of forethought. And with regards to having some fun, let me just remind you, Curtis, I don't do dull and boring. So we're definitely going to have some fun.
Yeah. Now, Karl, you're actually fresh from the Automotive Fellowship International meeting in Luton Hoo. So can you just give us a flavour of how that went? How did it go? Who did you bump into? What did you talk about?
Yeah, sure. Well, AFI is definitely about getting the most senior people, the forward thinkers, to kick things around, brainstorm, and come up with some fresh ideas. And the meeting that I've just attended was definitely that. Great keynote speaker, Jason Mallinson, one of the lead divers that rescued the 13 boys from the cave in Thailand. You might remember.
I do, yeah.
And just a great agenda on day two, including a fantastic piece which was called The Rocky Road to 2035, and a great panel. You know, Steve Young from ICDP in Plumber, Auto Trader, of course, Dale, he doesn't need an introduction, and Steve Gooding from the RAC Foundation. So it was a really good meeting, and I was very flattered to be invited to speak, because that's not an easy gig, let me tell you. And I spoke about the employer of choice, how to gain and retain the best talent, and that's something I've always been passionate about. But if ever there was a time to be that, the employer of choice, it's right now, against the backdrop of 1,051,000 vacancies. And whilst that's coming down slowly quarter by quarter, when you look ahead to the end of the decade, across the economy, I've done lots of analysis of the research that's out there from ONS, IFS, IMI, Glassdoor, Indeed, etc., and that's only set to get tougher, because the economy, it's suggested, will need a further 2.6 million employees by the end of the decade in the UK. And our sector in particular, which is what this is all about, is 159,000 additional people when you take into account employment displacement when people retire, etc. So I covered off 5 topics there.
Oh, brilliant. And the audience very much made up of movers and shakers in the industry. Can you tell us who you bumped into?
Yeah, there's some of the big names out there. There's Mr. Forrester from Vertu, there's John O'Hanlon, some of the smaller retailers, high performers like Nathan Tomlinson at Devonshire, Mark Lampbird at Eastbourne Motoring Centre, and so many others. I'm doing an injustice. A real stellar audience, and for that reason, a tough gig, because these people are not easily swayed.
No.
But you know me, Kurt. I like the tough gigs, and
you like a challenge, which is why you're on the podcast.
Well, I'm easily bored, so I've got to keep myself occupied, haven't I?
Yeah, you have indeed. So, look, we have a few shout-outs this week. So, first of all, do check out the midweek interview I did with CAP HPI's Darren Martin. Darren was talking to me about the 1.4% drop in used values in June. What actually drove the third drop in 3 months. And as he was quick to point out repeatedly, deflation is the norm in the used car business, so no cause for concern. But he also looked at trends over the first 6 months of the year, as we're at the midpoint now, and also his thoughts on the coming week. So the full episode is on your podcast feed, so do check it out. On this week's show, we have a chat with eBay Motors Group's Lucy Tugby, and Lucy will be sharing a sneak preview of eBay Motors Group's June market view, which is pinpointing used car retailing trends in June. Also on this show, we're joined by Stephen Whitton for the latest Menable Moment, and he'll be looking at sorting out or celebrating the junk draw, plus an update on his Wellbeing Winners initiative, which was launched only last month on this podcast. But before we go any further, as we're recording this, Karl, Car Dealer have just launched their Power Award. So we thought we'd give a quick roundup. We're not going to go through all the winners and all the highly commenders, but we do wish everyone well who did win and everyone who was highly commended. So congratulations to all of those. Now, the Car Dealer Power Awards, so they're on the Car Dealer website. They've done a great video hosted by James Baggett and Batch, where they go through all the categories and they talk to the winners. So that's available on the website, and we'll put a link in the newsletter. So as I say, we don't have time to cover all the categories, but I thought maybe if we just start off with some of the car brands, because the Power Awards are split into car brands and suppliers. So looking at some of the best performing car brands, and the criteria is, which are the car brands that you value the most in terms of representation. And on the website there is actually a great piece of supporting research for each car maker if you want to do a deeper dive into how they got the rankings. So number 5 is Nissan. Number 4 is Suzuki. You've already mentioned Dale Wyatt, so well done to Dale and the team there. Number 3, BMW. Number 2, Kia, who were last year's winner. And number 1 overall was Toyota. So what did you make of the top performers there, Karl?
Well, I'm always fascinated by such awards, and particularly where you can't self-nominate and sort of prove, where it's an independent shout out from those people that interact with these suppliers and brands. For me, what's common across the best businesses as rated in this latest report is where there's a strong relationship, where there's a clear strategy, and where there's fair reward. Those brands do the best. And if we just look at the number 1 spot in this particular set of awards, Toyota, throughout that organisation globally and in the UK, and I've had lots of dealings with Toyota over the years, there's a deep-seated value of doing the honourable thing, and it's easy to buy into that, isn't it? People are trying to do the right thing, fair play, and typically, those consistently high performers just continually do the right thing, which is interesting when you compare some of those traditionally low performers that maybe take a short-termist win-lose approach.
Yeah, definitely. It is a very strong top 5. And you've got some of the winners in the suppliers category, haven't you, Karl?
Yeah, I think it's particularly impressive when you look at some of those businesses, because it's not easy being a supplier. I've been a supplier for a very long time, and it's hard to actually stay at the top of your game. And if you look at some of those companies that really deserve a shout out, right at the very top, Mannheim. And what was apparent in that organisation is trying to do the right thing, being fair, adapting the way they do things, taking a hybrid approach and taking the best from what's gone before and what the future holds. But also good to see Warranty Wise getting a good score, Spider's Net, and Gardex. Gardex, all good submissions, and they deserve their shout out.
Yeah, and the Gardex one is actually for product innovation, and that's the engaged sales and service. And as you say, particularly relevant because this is all voted by the end users. So do head over to Car Dealer for the full roundup. And if you have got 45, 50 minutes or so, do watch the video because they've done a really good job on that.
Motor Trade
Just a
Radio
final
podcast,
point.
powered by eBay Motors Group.
So on this week's show, we'll start with that sneak preview in a moment of the eBay Motors Group June market view of used car retailing trends. Headlines this week come from Motor Trader, AM, The Daily Telegraph and Autocar, and they are: Vertu reports positive trading with resilient used car market. Car buyers are keeping deposits and payments consistent despite interest rate increases. Volkswagen scales back EV production. Yep, you did hear that correctly. And finally this week, we'll take a look at a new report which has found that pothole damage from EVs is double that of petrol cars. First up on this week's show, we have an exclusive preview of eBay Motor Group's market view for June, and we're delighted to welcome Marketing Director and friend of the show, Lucy Tugby, to talk us through it. So welcome back to the podcast, Lucy. Great to have you back on. It's July already. How was your June?
Oh, good. Yeah, thanks very much for having me on again. It was good and busy. I'm really pleased to be on here today talking about some trends. So we can take you through those now.
Yeah, no, great to have you with us. Now, as regular listeners will know, we do cover the market view every month on the show as it provides a useful barometer on how the retail side of the used car market is performing, specifically in terms of average retail prices, dealer stock levels and days to sell. So can you just take us through what the data from motors.co.uk is showing across those three areas?
Yeah, of course. So starting with stock, overall looking at all the stock on the site, there's actually very little to report. Stock is slightly up month on month at 0.7%. And that represents a rise of 0.2% year on year. But actually, if we look at a sample of the same dealerships over the last year, we see that supermarkets have increased their stock slightly at 0.7%, but actually franchise and independents are seeing a 7% decline in stock, which is, again, likely due to the stock challenges that we've talked about many times on the show. And probably felt more by these retailers who are stocking a more specific stock profile versus the supermarkets. We also see that alternative fuel stock is down month on month for June. So minus 7.3% for hybrid and minus 3.6% for EV. So this means that these vehicles are making up a smaller share of our overall stock mix. And they're down from 11% of all the stock in May and to 9.9% in June. And then moving on to days to sell or demand. Overall, we can see that is slightly down month on month, so minus 2.6%, which does indicate that there's good consumer demand out there. Maybe there was some delays from all the May bank holiday frenzy where people were out doing other things. Now they can become a little bit more focused on making those car choices before the summer holidays. And our fastest selling vehicles this month were dominated actually by Vauxhall, probably influenced as well by the 0% APR offer that's been running and advertised quite heavily, helping those more cost conscious consumers to make the decision to buy now. Moving on to pricing, we've seen a small softening in prices in June with a 0.8% decline month on month, which is still worth remembering. That is 10% up year on year, and that's sort of impacted all dealers and across our most popular models as well.
So really pretty steady over in terms of prices, stock levels and demand over the course of June. And as you say, after what was a slightly unusual May with all those bank holidays.
Absolutely, yeah. There was a lot going on for everyone, wasn't there?
There certainly was. Now, as we've reached the midpoint of the year, what does the market view data show in terms of some of the trends, some of the sort of more significant trends over the last 6 months?
Yeah, so I think again, focusing on pricing, it's interesting to see that over the last 6 months, since the January highs of coming into the market, there's definitely been a pressure on particularly older vehicles, to those over 10 years, which actually have fallen 5% since January, or £340, versus those younger vehicles where we're seeing some smaller softening, but after really some heady growth in 2022. And days to sell, we're seeing sort of those drops month on month for all ages of vehicles and dealer types as well.
And just following up on pricing, because this month, for the first time, you've actually done some analysis on price trends by fuel type. So can you take us through some of the month on month and year on year changes and what they actually show us?
Yes, of course. So in terms of petrol and diesel, we're seeing some small declines there, with petrol stock prices down 0.8%, and diesel as 0.1%, after some year-on-year increases that we still see. But EV conversely have seen a small price increase, so of 1.1% month on month. But not to forget that these are actually down 16.6% year on year, with some models like the Skoda Enyaq and the Model 3 down 25% year on year. So those month on month trends showing some more stability and some increases, small increases, but year on year some significant declines. And I think we're now starting to see that stability in month to month prices for EVs, perhaps coming back by the stock levels coming to a sort of more sensible volume. So we've got this balance now back with supply and demand.
And I think a lot of listeners will be pleased to hear about that. Stability, certainly within the EV pricing, because it has been quite an eventful couple of months, hasn't it, for pricing across the board in terms of EVs?
Yes, it has, and I think this is it's early indications, but certainly we were encouraged to see that we're not seeing these sort of large declines in the EV sector.
And Lucy, but before you go, I know you talk to dealers on a regular basis, and in fact you had a big conference recently, and you had some dealers there. What are they talking? What are they telling you about trends and confidence as we go into July?
Yes, exactly. We had a great company event called Ignite 23, and we had a fantastic group of panelists who came along to talk to all of our teams, and we had some great feedback and insights from them. I guess overall incredibly busy, really focused on customer service. That is at the forefront of every conversation about how can we service the customer better. And I think as we're seeing, with what's happening in the market and interest rate rises, consumers are going to start to feel like those squeezes on their monthly budgets increasingly over the coming months. And we know from all of our consumer insight panel data that it's all about the monthly budget. It's all about starts with price. So actually making sure that that the consumers are getting really good offers, that the finance deals are really attractive, and we've seen that working really well for Vauxhall this month. But also customer service, wanting to feel like they're really getting a good experience from the retailer they're buying from, and helping them to sort of really de-risk some of this purchase with good warranty offers and servicing packages as well.
Yeah,
so sort of avoid any nasty surprises.
Yeah, absolutely, and that level of confidence sounds pretty encouraging, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Well, Lucy, many thanks for joining us and sharing this sneak preview of some of the insights from the latest market view ahead of its publication. Now, the full report is, of course, much, much more detailed, and listeners will be able to find it on the eBay Motors Group website, which is ebaymotorsgroup.co.uk, and that will be from Monday. So, look, great to talk to you, and we look forward to catching up again soon.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's been great.
Thank you. Well, Karl, as ever, some fascinating insight there from eBay Motors Group. And I guess the overall impression I get is it's very much the used market at the moment, after the ups and downs, it's pretty much steady as she goes at the moment because, prices have dipped slightly, days to sale have improved slightly, and stock levels remain under pressure, but there seems to be a balancing out between supply and demand. What are you hearing in the market?
Well, I think a few things there. First of all, I love the fact that we're using data-driven analysis to get an understanding of the big picture, and I'm definitely hearing enough from a number of our clients saying that they've got to hold their nerve. They've got to hold their nerve, and yes, by all means, flex. And I think some of the points that Lucy made over the payments is key, and we'll come on to that again later in the show. But I think we've been in this sort of crazy space for a couple of years now, or more, of inflation on used cars rather than deflation. And my advice to listeners would be let's make sure we're on top of the housekeeping, the in-house keeping and the online housekeeping, with regards to price, for example, and the way the products are marketed with photography and videos and things like that. And I suppose the retailers are in a better position if they're generating their own stock. So those with a new car operation should be finding it easier than those without. And we've seen some interesting headlines over the last week or two from one or two of the used car multi-site retailers. And definitely for any used car retailer that's not only got a new car business but an after-sales business, they're reducing the risk even further, and that's essential for any business. I can remember back in the day massive deflation in prices, and we're not in that space now, but we shouldn't let that allow us to get a bit lazy around that housekeeping.
Yeah, no, definitely. And in terms of pricing, it is worth remembering that the market on eBay Motors Group pricing is actually up 10% year on year. So although we're getting these small downward movements month on month, we're still 10% ahead of where we were last year in terms of retail pricing. So
indeed.
Yeah, let's move on to some headlines, shall we, Karl?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Okay, so first headline this week, and it ties in very neatly with our last story, is from Motor Trader, and it's Vertu reports positive trading with resilient used market. So this is particularly significant because it's the first quarterly update from Vertu since they acquired Helston garages in December last year for £117 million, and let's not forget that was a 28 site group, so quite significant, and it's now starting to feed into their financials. So this is the first 3 months up to the end of May 2023, and within the story, it's really talking about how the performance has been driven by this resilient used market, which I know you'll talk about it in a moment, and also this improving new car supply. So it said that full year results for the financial year of 2024 are expected to be in line with current market expectations. So just looking at new car performance over that 3 month period, new car retail and Motability like-for-like volume was actually up by 11%, with particular strength in Motability volumes. Like-for-like new vehicle margins have remained strong at 7.9% compared to 8% last year, and that's despite higher lower margin Motability sales. So pretty strong performance there with new car sales, as that supply just improves and gets better. So what did you make of the used car performance, Karl?
I think the used car performance is impressive year on year. So yes, it's down slightly for Vertu at just under 6%. No surprise there really, given the new car position. But what really impressed me, Curtis, was the 1,648 margin, comparable to last year. That's a healthy gross profit.
Yeah.
And I think what's really impressive about Vertu is they really know how to manage their manage expectations and manage their PR. And I bet the final figures that are produced actually show an improvement on the current market expectations, because Robert's a master at that.
Yeah, he certainly is. So heading over to AM Online for the next headline, and the headline is "Car Buyers Keeping Deposits and Payments Remarkably Consistent Despite Interest Rate Increases." So this is motor finance deposits and monthly payments. It's research that was done by iVendi, and it's really looking at how the impact of the economy challenges and the Bank of England's rising interest rates is actually filtering into how buyers are choosing to fund their cars in terms of outlay. So the new figures from iVendi show that a year ago the average deposit for a used car was £2,859, while the monthly payment was £292. And today, although the base rate has risen from 1.25% 12 months ago to 5% now, those figures remain largely unchanged at deposit of £2,932 and monthly payments of £304. And I think this rather suggests that buyers are really focusing in on, if I can use the term comfort level, as we're going through this cost of living crisis, but they really are focusing on those monthly costs and basing their purchases on what is affordable. So we're not actually seeing much change year on year. What do you think of this one, Karl?
I was stunned by this article, actually, Curtis, that the deposit increase was only £70, the monthly instalment was only £12, because the anecdotal evidence suggests different than that. Now, I believe in data, and I'm sure Will and the team at iVendi are giving us the data as they see it. I'd love to compare it with other data in due course, because just so many examples of retailers and consumer mates of mine saying pretty much the same car, the latest incarnation of the car they had before, is typically 20 and 25% more expensive per month. So I was really, really stunned by this, and I'm going to compare it with other data in due course. But what I really liked about the article was the evidence that the sort of online facilitation is helping the personalised solution. So the fact that the consumer can dial in the deposit, the instalment they're looking for, the number of months, that really puts a big question mark over that in-house finance manager's role, doesn't it? Because why would we wish to do something with a human if we can do it quickly from the comfort of our own armchair through a bot? And I think this is a good use of a bot, in my opinion.
Yeah, good point, Karl. And within the piece, James Chew, Chief Exec of iVendi, does actually make the point that this facility for customers to go on and tailor their monthly payments really does feed into what the FCA are looking at in terms of fair outcomes for consumers, so they can go in and really tailor it towards what their budget is likely to be over the next 12 months or 3 years. So some interesting outputs from that story.
It's consumer friendly, isn't it?
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by eBay Motors Group. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand wherever you are on your podcast feed. Next up is our latest Menable Moment, looking at mental health and well-being awareness, issues and best practices across the automotive sector with me, Stephen Whitton. Yeah, hi everyone. Menable Moments time again, and well done Curtis for holding the fort while your Oppo suns himself somewhere nice and warm. Hope he's having a great time. You're doing a great job there, Curtis, so well done. That sounded a bit condescending, didn't it? Didn't mean to, but you know what I mean. Anyway, Menable Moments time. I'm going to bring you some news and views from the world of well-being in the automotive industry. But before that, I want you to delve into your drawers. I did a post earlier this week where I talked about the junk drawer. You know that drawer in your office or maybe in your kitchen or a bedroom where you just keep chucking stuff in there that you know you probably should get rid of, but you can't bring yourself to. And as a result, over the years, this drawer has ended up full of wires for things you got no need to have because you can't remember what they go with, chargers, old batteries, there's a pair of scissors in there somewhere, tape measures, that's typically the good one that's in there somewhere, and all that kind of stuff that you probably need a good old sort out, but you can't bring yourself to get rid of some of it. Now, I did this post and I talked about how that's a great metaphor for some people's minds, certainly mine, that my mind is full of stuff from years and years and years back that I can't bring myself to get rid of. I can't bring myself to just clear out completely. And so that being the case, why should I beat myself up over it? Why should I open that drawer, look in it and go, oh my God, I know I'd feel so much better if I sorted that out. Why don't I just celebrate that metaphorical drawer and just go, you know what, that's the stuff that's helped me grow. It's helped me to develop and it's helped me maybe to protect myself at times and also give me an element of comfort. Now, that's where the metaphor loses its edge, because obviously if it is a drawer just full of junk, then clearly you can have a bit of a sort out and it will make you feel better. But when we use that metaphor for our brain, it really kind of worked for me. And I was quite surprised actually at the amount of messages and comments that I got from people who said that it resonated. So it really sort of demonstrates that we all have this junk drawer of stuff going on. All of our experiences, stuff that we've seen, heard, been involved in, and so on. And that's the same for everyone around you. So check out your junk drawer, celebrate what's in it, be happy with what's there. Don't beat yourself up if you can't bring yourself to sort it out, if you can't be bothered or whatever. And then that's fine too. And just go with the flow. So, a couple of bits of news from the world of well-being in our industry. Seen a fantastic post this week from Gavin White and the team at Autotech celebrating a transgender woman who is making her way through the industry, a lady called Kay. Has an inspirational story and just wanted to give a little shout out to that because I honestly reposted it saying, wow, that's just filled me with so much love that here's an industry that we know it's male dominated, we know it's a masculine environment, and we know that traditionally that's come with lots of, the whole bravado and all of that. But for somebody to be doing that in our environment, that just says, wow, that's inspirational from that individual. And it's also amazing that we genuinely do have in our industry environments where it's psychologically safe to do stuff like that. And I almost want to be doing a bit of a mic drop moment there and going, my work here is done, but I'm clearly not. I'm a long way off that, so don't worry. But it just made me think, wow, that's amazing, and it's uplifting and inspirational. And inclusivity and diversity, of course, are the very keys to a sustainable future. So, yeah, well done everyone involved in that. Got the Vehicle Remarketing Association AGM coming up, where yours truly will be joining a panel with Rachel from Ben and for some people from a couple of other wellbeing organisations, where we will be talking about wellbeing in the industry. So if you're involved in the VRA and you're able to pop along to that meeting in Birmingham, 13th of July, then that's going to be a great one. We've got Dale Wyatt and Peter Smythe talking there as well. So a little bit of a plug for... Say we, that's good, isn't it? Phil included. That's amazing. So yeah, come along if you're able. And the final bit of news is that on our front, the Wellbeing Winners programme is really starting to make some moves. We've started to do our first face-to-face sessions in dealerships, where the GM and every manager of every department goes through the same process, and we create the scores and we create a report and we give them some suggested actions, and then they take their own put their own action plan together and move forward to go up the accreditation scale. Not going to share the outcomes of what's specific to particular businesses, but we'll share that we are getting quite a bit of interest in that, and really looking forward to that motoring ahead. In fact, even today I've taken some more bookings for that for July. So all good stuff, heading in the right way, and really, again, filling me with so much, what's the word, inspiration, I suppose, or feeling of love that our industry really can be, and is, quite a lot of the time, bloody amazing. So, have a great weekend, enjoy the rest of the podcast, and I will be back fairly soon. Back to you, Curtis. Take care, everyone, and we will speak later. Take care.
Many thanks for that, Steve. I don't know about you, Karl, but my junk drawer is staying unsorted, defiantly unsorted. How about yours?
I like to keep my junk out of sight. I don't want it in my vision, but each to their own. Yeah. And you know what? I think Steve's made a great point there. I think he's a great guy. If ever there was a time, this is his time. He's adding so much value to our industry. And just going back to the start of the show, when we mentioned, speaking at AFI, one of the 5 things that the research that I analysed showed was that openness is so important if you want to be the employer of choice, and particularly for the young. They are demanding this. The young will not put up with some of the things that middle-aged blokes like you and me put up with over the years. So it's great to hear from Steve. It really is.
Yeah, and a good update there on how Wellbeing Winners is resonating with dealers and suppliers. And to get in touch with Steve, as ever, you can head over to menable.org, or you can email him at stephen.whitton@menable.org, and that's Stephen with a PH. He's also on LinkedIn and Twitter, so head over to social media, get in touch and get involved. Now, last 2 stories of the week coming up now, Karl, and the first one, I'm looking at the headline now and I still can't believe it, but it comes from Autocar, and the headline is Volkswagen scales back EV production. So fascinating story that broke during the week. So Volkswagen has introduced measures to temporarily scale back production of electric models at one of its German plants. Now, according to the car makers' work council, a shift at Volkswagen's Emden plant has been cancelled for the next 2 weeks in the lead up to what is usually the traditional summer holiday shutdown in July and August, which has been extended for EV production by 1 week to 4 weeks. So it's quite a lot happening here around EVs, and the reason that it's down to is very much Volkswagen looking at demand within the market and finding that its production plans are 30% ahead of where demand is, and this has prompted Volkswagen to certainly pull back production of the ID4 SUV, but also the forthcoming ID7 saloon. And it's quite interesting that the Passat, which is actually pretty much on run-out, because the ICE versions of the Passat will be discontinued at the end of the year after 46 years, but production for those is continuing. What did you make of this, Karl?
I thought it was really interesting, Curtis, that of the 300 workers at the Emden plant, that's 20% of the workforce there. And I thought it was really interesting that those contracts will not be renewed in August as well. So it's an indication of the mood. And the fact that it's currently their sales are tracking at 30% below expectation is evidence of that. And I think what's really important is that we face up to the economics of it. Unless EV is going to be supported directly or indirectly, the consumer appetite is at risk. And there's quite a lot of friction around owning an electric car, whether it's the price premium to start with, or whether it's the range, or whether it's charge anxiety. If you look at some of the markets that have made the most progress, arguably the most progress is Finland, and definitely the success there has been driven by support, direct and indirect support to actually make the cost of ownership less. So interesting. I'm going to watch that one with real attention.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right there, because within this story, VW are calling for government incentives, including reductions in VAT, at a time when you would have thought that the German EV market was actually really healthy. So it just shows the pressures that are being felt, certainly in the UK, are being shared elsewhere across Europe.
Yeah, at the end of the day, governments have got to balance the books, and they've got to take the tax from somewhere and spend it on something. And we've got great ambitions in the UK, but I don't think we've necessarily got all the substance to back it up. It feels like a wish rather than a strategic intention at the moment for me.
So, and finally this week, so I was amazed to see this story, which was actually on the front page of the Telegraph during the week. So, just to rewind, just a couple of weeks ago, we brought you news of older car parks needing to be rebuilt to accommodate the heavier weight of EVs. So, on the back of this comes this new report from the Daily Telegraph, and the headline is "Pothole Damage from electric cars is double that of petrol," new data shows. So this is suggesting that EVs damage roads twice as much as their petrol equivalents, and the analysis shows that the pothole crisis, as the Telegraph terms it, is growing on Britain's roads. Now, analysis by the Telegraph has found that the average electric car more than doubles the wear on road surfaces, which in turn could increase the number of potholes. And what they've done is they've got together with the University of Leeds and analysed the weights of 15 popular EVs alongside their nearest petrol equivalents. And what they're suggesting in this piece is, because of the extra weight of the battery packs, the average electric car puts 2.24 times more stress on roads than its petrol equivalent, and 1.95% more than diesels. And they found that EVs were on average 312 kilograms heavier than petrol models, and because of these battery packs. So an intriguing one, this, isn't it, Karl?
Well, it is actually. I'm just going to go back to the previous podcast where you were talking about car parks, and you came up with the genius answer of getting EVs to park on the ground floor, which I thought you could make a lot of money actually selling consultancy like that, Curtis.
Yeah, I wish I'd charged for that.
But it would appear that strategy is flawed if we're going to wear the roads out, driving from A to B. And I've got a friend that builds housing estates. It's his own family business. They build several hundred houses a year. And I'm always having fascinating conversations listening to James. And there is a specification for building a type of road. And that article really makes the point really well, that the vehicles that are using the roads are set to exceed the specification of how they're being built. So it's an interesting conundrum. And I also read an article the other day. I'm a motorcyclist, not a very good one, but I read an article that said it was okay to weave on your motorbike, which is just as well, sort of swerving from side to side within your carriageway. And that's an essential behaviour from any motorcyclist at the moment, because it is constantly dodging potholes. And you've told me, Curtis, that you've got even more potholes in the southeast where you live compared to up here in Derbyshire.
Yeah, well, as you know, I was on holiday in Derbyshire a couple of weeks ago, and I definitely had road envy because the roads around where I live outside of Reigate is just absolutely appalling. There's so many potholes that just aren't being repaired, and those that are repaired tend to get these temporary fills which break down within days, and you're left with a worse problem than before. So at the moment there's plenty of time spent by the council actually marking up these potholes but not actually sorting them out. So I thought your road services were much better, Karl.
Well, if we've got to the point where we're talking about potholes, Curtis, we really have become old men, haven't we? But
we have indeed.
It's a growing problem for sure.
Yeah, and we've also got to the end of the packed show, Karl. How was your co-hosting experience?
It was wild. It was wild, Curtis. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
No, look, Karl, many thanks for agreeing to sit in the hot seat this week, and really glad you enjoyed yourself. Great to catch up with you again, and many thanks for coming on. Really do appreciate your time, Karl.
Love the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
But unfortunately, that's all we have time for. So many thanks to all of you for joining us on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. Until next week, when Philip's back from his holidays and back in the virtual studio, it's goodbye from me.
And as they say, it's goodbye from him. Goodbye.
If you'd like to get in touch with Philip and Curtis, maybe with a press release, or even join them on a show, please send an email to motortraderadio@yahoo.com. You can also join the Motor Trade Radio LinkedIn and Facebook groups, or follow the podcast on Twitter.